He passed the first test. It wasn't a very difficult test. It was more like a worksheet or something. It wasn't too hard. He just had to say the right things, and there's going to be a microscope on him, everything he says and does, as long as he is down there in Tampa Bay. And so far, he's said the right things, that he's grateful and he feels like he has changed a bit, maybe even matured. So I don't know that it was a high bar, but he cleared it.
So they play the biggest game of the weekend. I should remind everyone, in case you're not following, obviously it's been a busy news week. This is the weekend that they play New Orleans again. And the Saints already have banked a win in that division. That's the Sunday night game this week. Louis Riddick, realistically, how much should we expect Antonio Brown to be involved in the game Sunday night?
I think it's all going to depend, Greeny, on his week of practice and what kind of conditioning he shows, how he feels the next day and the next day and the next day, because we all know that it's all about recovery, especially when you've been off from football for a while and haven't gone through a full practice. We've all been there. You know what kind of muscle soreness you experience. But I think, you know, his relationship with Tom Brady and his relationship with the number of people that they have on that staff in particular that have been around him when he was in Pittsburgh will kind of expedite this process. I think it's something where if he feels good and he's catching passes and this offense is rolling, you'll see him more. You know, and I think a lot of it will be dictated by game conditions as well. The tighter the game, the more productive he is, the more he's going to be out there. If they start blowing him out, if it's one of those games where they get a 2-3 touchdown lead, and he's maybe feeling a little bit of soreness, you'll see him pull him off. Look, he didn't sign there for them to ease him into it. I mean, they're right in the thick of it now, so they need his production on the field. So I think it's all going to be dictated by game conditions.
We're going to take a little closer look at this game a little bit later in the show because it is the most important game of the weekend. But yesterday, Bruce Arians said, hey, he might play 10 plays, he might play 35 plays. D. Wood, if you had to bet on it, would you guess it'll be closer to 10 or closer to 35 for AB?
I would think most closer to 35. And I think Lewis, made a good point. It just depends on the conditions during the game. AB is the one thing we know about AB is, regardless of what you hear about off the field, this guy's always been a consummate pro as far as his practice habits, staying in great shape. So I anticipate him coming in, feet to the ground and hitting the ground running. So if the game conditions say that, you know what, he's feeling good, things are working out, and we need him, then they're going to keep feeding it to him. And like Lewis said, I think everything's going to be predicated on the game conditions.
Shefty, what do you think?
Well, listen, Chris Godwin was back at practice yesterday, and before his surgery a couple of weeks ago, doctors told him that he could miss 4 to 6 weeks. After the surgery, they revised their opinions and said it's a week-to-week deal, and now he's back at practice. One of the reasons this team signed Antonio Brown is because Mike Evans has been dealing with an ankle injury. Chris Godwin had the fractured finger. Scotty Miller hasn't been entirely healthy, and they wanted somebody to be able to step in to be healthy at all times. Now, Antonio Brown is the ultimate luxury toy, but the thing here also is that there's no guaranteed money in his contract. They need him to be on his best behavior. They are aware of his past and his history, and if there's any missteps, any transgressions at all, they will simply move away from him at that particular moment. But as it currently stands, he adds great depth, he adds great talent, he gives them an element that they could use, and they will be a better offense for it.
No, that seems right. D. Wood is the one who's been in an offensive huddle here. I'll often hear quarterbacks say every receiver thinks he's open on every single play. They've got so many good players on that offense right now. Take us inside that offensive huddle. If all those guys, if Evans and Gronk and Godwin and Miller and the running backs and now AB are all yelling at Brady, hey, I'm open, what does the quarterback say?
Well, first of all, Greeny, none of those guys are going to be yelling at Brady that he's open. I mean, you're talking about the six-time Super Bowl champion here. He's going to dictate the terms of who's going to get fed the ball. Listen, all these, whether you're talking about Leonard Fournette, AB, these guys chose to come to Tampa Bay for a reason to play with Tom Brady. So at the end of the day, Tom Brady's going to feed the guys who are open. He's going to go do his thing, and ultimately, this is about winning the chip.
I hear that. I think that's right. I remember when John Elway retired, when he thanked Shannon Sharp, he said, I want to thank Shannon, and I know you're open. I know you're open. at his retirement press conference. So Lewis, I said yesterday on the show, Tom Brady brought Leonard Fournette. Tom Brady brought Gronk. Tom Brady now brought Antonio Brown. Not only might he be the MVP, he might be the executive of the year. What do you think?
Yeah, Tom has... He has some influence, man. You know what's so cool about him, about having played some kind of role in getting all those guys to come there, is that when you talk to Tom Brady, like we talked to him last week, before the Monday night game, This guy, he has such a unique perspective in terms of how he still approaches the game. And no matter what kind of resume you come in there with, you better be ready to work. I mean, and work like a guy who's just kind of entering the league again. Because not only does he talk that way, I mean, when you talk to him and you ask him those questions, like he really believes like he's still earning it every day, and he's trying to prove it every day. And look, and Damian's right. Look, no one's telling Tom I'm open. No one's telling him, hey, get me the ball. He's telling you, look, I'm going to run this offense, and I'm going to get this ball to you when I get it to you, when it's time for you to get it. So it's such a cool situation, you know, that's predicated off of him being there and being the quarterback. Like Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, man, they're like kids in a candy store with this group.
Nick, final thought.
Yeah, the one thing that I think is really interesting that jumped into my head back when Schefter was talking was they said if he has some sort of transgression, then they can just move on from him. But if you think back to the Patriots situation, he had a transgression that the organization wanted to move on from, but Tom Brady didn't feel like he wanted to move on in that situation. I think that's where potential friction, if there's going to be any friction, and I'm not predicting that there will be some, there's the assumption that people all see whatever transgressions that are going to come or issues that are going to come, that they all see them the same way. So that's where the issue could come up, whether he's on a long-term contract or not. If he does something or says something that the players are not too upset about, but the organization is disappointed in, that's where a potential fracture or fissure in this organization or in this team could come up, when people see his behavior differently and the result, what the consequences should be for that behavior differently, as they did last time he was on a team in New England.
All right, we'll see what winds up happening. Again, he's living in Tom Brady's house. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.